Hello dear friends, welcome to my YouTube channel Mukesh English. In this video, I'm going to have a discussion about Winston Churchill's famous commencement speech at Harrow School in 1941 titled Never Given. Before we analyze Winston Churchill's speech, let's know about Sir Winston Churchill. Sir Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill was a British statesman, orator, and author who served as the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom two times, first from 1940 to 1945 and the second time from 1951 to 1955. He was born on 30th November 1874 in Oxfordshire in England to a wealthy aristocratic family. His father, Lord Randolph Churchill, represented the Conservative and had been elected as the Member of Parliament for Woodstock, while his mother, Jenny, she was the daughter of a wealthy American businessman. Churchill began boarding at St. George's School in Ascot, Berkshire, at the age of 7. He was very poor academically. In 1884, he transferred to Brunswick School in Hoe, where his academic performance improved. In 1888 April, when he was just 13 years old, he narrowly passed the entrance examination for Harrow School, and later he joined the military academy at Harrow School. In February 1895, Churchill was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Queen's Own Cavalry Regiment of the British Army. Along with the regiment, he came to Bangalore in October 1896 as a young army officer, and he left 3 years here. In his famous book titled My Early Life, he writes about Bangalore, and he says, "The climate of Bangalore at more than 3,000 feet above sea level is excellent. The sun, even at midday, is temperate, and the mornings and the evenings are fresh and cool." He died in January 1965 at his London home. So that's a brief information about Sir Winston Churchill. Let's know the background of the speech. On 29th October 1941, Sir Winston Churchill delivered one of his most famous speeches at Harrow School in London. The speech was addressed during the time of the Second World War, when Britain was going through a major crisis. Just 10 months prior to the speech, the United Kingdom engaged in an air battle with Nazi Germany, which caused a great loss to the country. Winston Churchill motivates the young students to leave the past behind and not heed to others' words. In his speech, he also stresses on the importance of never surrendering to defeat and hopelessness, no matter how bleak the situation is, or how the over how the overwhelming mighty the enemy is. Let the enemy be the more powerful, but he says that we should not surrender to any defeat or any hopelessness. This is a message he would like to convey by his speech titled Never Given. Winston Churchill started his speech saying that he had come at Harrow School almost after 1 year at the kind invitation of headmaster of the school to cheer himself and the hearts of a few of his friends by singing some of their songs, some of their own songs, the school song. Describing the situation of Britain in the last 10 months, he comments that many terrible, catastrophic events happened in the world, ups and downs, misfortunes. He also remarks that no one is bothered about it and no one feels deeply thankful to the great improvement of UK and of the homes. Here, he wants to instill patriotic spirit in the people and encourage them to face the difficult situation and fight bravely against the Nazis. Churchill reviewed the great events and suggested that his audience might be wondering why more was not happening. Further, He says that last time they were almost alone because they were poorly armed, but now they are not poorly armed. Recollecting the past experiences, the speaker says that enemy's danger or threat was not measured properly last time, and the air attacks experience is really unforgettable. And he further says, I expect you are beginning to feel impatient that there has been this long lull with nothing particular up. By using the words impatient and this long lull, the speaker wants to stimulate the listeners into action against the Nazis on the one hand, and on the other hand, it reveals the speaker's criticism of the inactiveness in the face of the powerful enemy. The speech continues. Sir Winston Churchill concentrated on the purpose of his speech, means to say that he would like to inspire his audience to maintain the relentless spirit of the nation and to fight for the final victory in the war. He brings out here two important lessons. The first lesson, which he would like to convey here, he would like to convey here, and he says we must learn to be equally good at what is short and sharp, what is long and tough. He means to say that British are fully aware that they should not only be able to fight and win short and quick battles, but also be ready to fight and win hard and enduring wars. It is generally believed that British are often better at the last. He means to say that British do not expect to move from crisis to crisis. They do not always expect that each day will bring up some noble chance of war, but when they slowly make up their minds that the thing has to be done, then even it might take years, it might take months or the years, but they do it. This is how the speaker, Mr. Churchill, he sings the glory of the British, then speaks about the second lesson. The speaker further says that the another lesson we may take by recalling the meeting before 10 months and now, and we will find that appearances are often deceptive. By this, speaker means to say that British should not be frightened by the seemingly powerful enemy and embittered by the misfortunes and disasters. Winston Churchill quotes the words of Rudyard Kipling, and he says that we must meet with a triumphant disaster and treat those to impostors just as the same. The speaker would like to say that both triumph and disaster are deceptive in that people people can make things out far worse than they really are when they have a disaster. They can lose their alertness when they are in triumph. Speaking on imagination, Winston Churchill discards the judgments from the appearances, and he says that imagination makes things out far worse than they really are. At the same time, he also emphasizes the importance of imagination because without imagination, not much can be done according to him. Imaginative people imagine more dangers than they exist, and many more will happen. At the same time, such people who imagine must pray for the extra courage to carry such far reaching imagination. Here, Winston Churchill's attitude towards the people who are imaginative is quite very much critical. Winston Churchill remarks about the lessons learned in the past 10 months. He says, never given, never given, never, 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 in nothing, great or small, large or petty, never given, except to convictions of honor and good sense, never yield to force, never yield to the apparently overwhelming might of the enemy. The lessons learned throughout the past 10 months was that when facing great difficulties, one should never give in. He says that With a combination of imagination and courage, British could overcome any kind of difficulties and smash any attack of the enemy. Mr. Churchill says that when the British were in heavy attacks by the Germany, many other nations thought that Britain was finished. As the country stood to the great ordeal surprise, those nations changed their views. Further, he says that we stood all alone a year ago, and to many countries it seemed that our account was closed. We were finished. All this tradition of ours, our songs, our school history, this part of the history of this country were gone and finished and liquidated. This is what he would like to recall here, what we have learnt in the past 10 months, which he would like to convey to this young generation, to the students of Harrow School. Mr. Churchill took one step further to convince the listener that it was high time that the British preserved to conquer, suggesting a more ambitious goal for the nation. As the speaker says, very different is the mood today. Other nations thought Britain had drawn a sponge across a slate, but instead our country stood in the gap. There was no flinching and no thought of giving in, and by what seemed almost a miracle to those outside these islands, though we ourselves never doubted it, we now find ourselves in a position where I say that we can be sure that we have only to persevere to conquer. It is the song's line, not less we praise in darker days. With the headmaster's permission, the speaker wished to alter darker to sterner, not less we praise in sterner days. Winston Churchill could not change the word darker to sterner before 10 months because that was the worst time for Britain. She was desperately alone, poorly armed, and many other countries believed that Britain would not be able to survive the war. It was not the right time to do so since pessimism was prevailing among many people at that time. The intention behind changing the word darker with sterner, that was, he had a strong conviction of victory. Mr. Churchill had a strong conviction of victory. That's the reason that he would like to change the word darker with sterner. Mr. Churchill says that the word darker carries a pessimism note, the pessimistic note, because it usually indicates a period of unpleasant and frightening tone. It also implies hopelessness in a difficult situation. Mr. Churchill says that the word sterner suggests a time that is called testing time, but testing in a way that offers the British the opportunity to display the courage to the fullest. That's the reason that he would like to alter the word darker with sterner, and the reason behind it, his strong conviction of victory. Winston Churchill encourages the British, saying, do not let us speak of darker days, let us speak of sterner days. These are not dark days, these are great days, the greatest days our country has ever lived. And we must all thank God that we have been allowed, each of us according to our stations, to play a part in making these days memorable in the history of our race. Winston Churchill concluded his speech by attending the school song instead of directly calling on the listeners to join the efforts against the enemy, because it would help the listeners better understand the situation and strengthen the conviction for the final victory of the war. Winston Churchill has achieved his purpose by the end of his speech. He has not only encouraged the audience of his speech, but also the British to continue to fight rather than surrender to enemy. So dear friends, thank you so much for watching this video. If you have any queries, any questions, you can mail me on mukeshenglish@gmail.com. Please do subscribe the channel, click on the like button, write in the comment box. Keep watching Mukesh English.